if you have politicians or the government or what have you that are manipulating the value of fiat currency, then wouldn't that kind of be how is that worse than the big swings that you see with Bitcoin? Like what's influencing that or who's influencing that?
Yeah, one of the things to remember is that when somebody says or talks about the dollar, we don't think of that as being volatile, right? It's
Mhm.
just, hey, I've got $10 in my pocket. If I go to the store, I can buy whatever $10 gets me.
Mhm.
But if you actually think about that dollar over even just the last 2 years, it's super volatile,
Mhm.
right? All of a sudden, it cost me 18% more to pay my rent this year than it did last year. It
Mhm.
cost me 20% more to go ahead and actually purchase a piece of real estate on the national average. It cost me 30% more to buy the S&P than it did 12 months ago. And it cost me, 8 or 9%, depending on the official numbers, to eat food at home. It cost me 50% more to actually buy a gallon of gasoline now than it did just 1 year ago. And so how much of that is because those assets or those different consumer goods actually became more valuable? A gallon of gasoline is just as valuable as it was 2 years ago as it is today.
Mm.
It's that the dollar has been drastically being devalued at a historic rate. And so, sure, there's supply chain issues that it's not just a black and white type scenario, but for the most part, the prices are going up more so because of the devaluation of the dollar. Now, we don't think of that as a volatile asset, but it is guaranteed to go down over time. And the reason why we don't think of it as volatile is because all of the goods and services in an economy are priced in that currency. So if I say to you, how much is a loaf of bread at the store? You say $2. You price it in dollars.
Mhm.
And so we don't think about the dollar being volatile because we simply think about consuming the goods and services in that currency. Now, when it comes to Bitcoin, people think of it as volatile because they price Bitcoin in dollars. And so the US dollar exchange value is volatile. But
Mm.
if I said to you that, hey, how much is that loaf of bread at the store? And you said to me, it's, 10,000 Satoshis. Now, all of a sudden, Bitcoin isn't volatile any more than the dollar is because now all of the goods and services around me are priced in Bitcoin.
Mhm.
And so ultimately, that's what occurs when you transition, right? I denominate my entire life in Bitcoin. I think about all of the purchases. I think about all of my expenses. I think about all of my income in terms of how much Bitcoin is this. And so I don't look at Bitcoin as being volatile because I just think in terms of Bitcoin. But if you're thinking in terms of dollars and evaluating other assets, whether it's the stock market, commodities, Bitcoin, et cetera, you're always going to think in terms of volatility because it's actually the exchange price that is volatile. And so if you were to kind of reverse this, well, the US dollar has been incredibly volatile against Bitcoin over the last 2 years, and it has been aggressively crashing. And it's lost, 90% of its value against Bitcoin in the last 2 years. Like, that doesn't sound so hot, right? Like, now all of a sudden, like, maybe I don't want to hold that asset. And so I think that's really what people are starting to try to understand is like there's a psychological component to this that you have to wrap your head around. It's hard, right?
Mhm.
We all have been conditioned to think in dollars. But in order to understand this new world, I think that's a key piece to it.
Absolutely. And I think a big hang up too is that because you mentioned like Satoshi, so like breaking down Bitcoin into a much smaller piece, but you see like this huge number, whether it's like 47,000 or 60,000 or whatever the value of Bitcoin is on the market that day. And you're like, well, how do I apply this to my everyday spending? Because I'm not spending in those big chunks on a normal daily basis. And then I've heard you mentioning Bitcoin as I don't wanna say maybe a replacement, if that's, like, the right word for the USD. So, I guess why that coin specifically? Are there other ones that you think would have a practical application for daily trades, like, between person and, like, consumer and business?
Yeah, so I don't necessarily think that Bitcoin is a replacement for the US dollar in its current state. I think that what we're watching first is you have to understand what exactly makes money, right? And there's basically three things that make up money. That you have to have a store of value, you have to have a medium of exchange, and you have to have a unit of account. The store of value is pretty clear. We need to have an asset that will hold value over time. Bitcoin is by far the best store of value on the entire planet. The compound annual growth rate of Bitcoin over the last decade is 150 plus percent. It absolutely destroys returns of gold, real estate, other commodities, stocks, etc. Then when we look at it as a medium of exchange, one of the things that we're starting to see now with the building out of the Lightning Network and the layer 2 is that Bitcoin can be transferred to anyone in the world completely for free, instantaneously with cash finality, meaning that you actually have the Bitcoin the second that somebody sends it to you. And you don't need permission from anyone. There's no confiscating the Bitcoin. There's no shutting it down. There's no censoring, etc. And so as a medium of exchange, it disappeared every other form out there. And then lastly, unit of account, that ultimately just comes up to the businesses. Are they going to start to price their goods and services in Bitcoin, or are they going to do it in other currencies? And so when you start to look at that, you say to yourself, wow, like if Bitcoin just becomes a store of value, a savings technology, that alone is worth trillions and trillions of dollars. And I think that is where we are right now at the most part, is like majority of people are simply saying, I want to buy Bitcoin and I want to hold it for a really long period of time. They used to do this with families, with gold, with real estate. They still do it, etc. And so this is just another asset to allow people to kind of transfer a depreciating asset, dollars, into a appreciating asset, hold it for decades, and then transfer that wealth between generations and ensure that this is a durable asset that will still have value, 50, 100 years from now. When you do that, then you end up building generational wealth for your kids, your grandkids, your great grandkids, etc. And so this is a story as old as time. It's just that this asset now is becoming kind of the new version, the digital version of being able to do this.